What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host, Caleb. If you guys want to support the channel, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You'll get a free $15 whenever you sign up, and you'll be supporting the channel. Additionally, you can become a patron. Not only is that the best way to support the channel, but you'll get to vote weekly on a deck tech for me to cover. Special shout out to my high contributing patrons. Newsome, you rock. Now, let's get into today's Precon upgrade. And I am going to do the formatting a little bit different on this one. So if you've been watching the Precon upgrades for a while, I'm really curious how you like this formatting versus what I've done in the past. I really appreciate your guys' feedback on that. So now let's get into what the face commander does, and you're definitely choosing him because this guy's pretty powerful. Satya, okay, this guy has menace and haste, which is really going to help him out because he does have a pretty busted attack trigger. Whenever you attack, go ahead and create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of up to one other non-token creature you control, and then you get 2 energy. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice that token unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So this is very powerful off the bat because, one, creating token copies of already creatures on the battlefield, really good because we're playing good creatures. Another thing that's really going to benefit this deck is playing very powerful low CMC creatures like your Esper Sentinels. That's not going to be in the Precon upgrade because I kept it pretty busted. Or sorry, not busted, budget, that's what I meant. And yeah, like, so your low CMC Esper Sentinel is going to be amazing in this deck because you can just easily pay 1 energy, keep it around, and now you just have a giant board of Esper Sentinels. Kind of busted. Another thing that's really good with this commander, and I don't think I have to tell you that, is creatures that generate extra combats, because if you have a combat trigger that goes ahead and, you know, creates a token copy of a creature, and that creature just so happens to generate an extra combat whenever it attacks, that is going to net you infinite combats. Now, you might be thinking Combat Celebrant's pretty good here. The only thing is you can't go off with it right away because whenever you create the tapped and attacking token, you can't exert it. So you do kind of have to give your Combat Celebrant haste to make that a viable plan because no one's letting you untap with that. I will say they did have an infinite combo in the deck, so we'll go over that real quick. It is Lightning Runner. So this guy has double strike, haste, and then whenever Lightning Runner attacks, you get 2 energy. Then you can pay 8 energy if you do untap all creatures you control, and after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. You just have to get to a point where with your commander and Lightning Runner, you find 4 more energy somewhere in there, and then you can kind of just take infinite combat steps. So that's going to be really good there. Notably, just creating more Lightning Runners does get you closer to that, and there is other things in the deck that generate energy whenever they enter the battlefield, so that's going to be pretty easy as well. But without further ado, let's kind of get into what I added here. The first thing I really wanted to look at is low CMC creatures that we can easily keep around with our commander that give us value, or low CMC creatures that have really good, you know, ETBs, because you do still get the ETB regardless if you keep it around or not. So Direfleet Daredevil seemed pretty good here. So whenever Direfleet Daredevil, I don't know why I can't say that today, but we're just going to roll with it, enters the battlefield, exile target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard, you may cast it this turn, and mana can be spent of any type, right? If you cast a spell, exile it. So basically, it just enters the battlefield, you exile an instant or sorcery spell, and you get to cast it that turn. That's very powerful in Magic, just having access to everybody's graveyard, really good. I mean, even in the early game, if this is a rampant growth, you're fine with that, and then in the late game, you're getting your key removal pieces, or maybe even a board wipe. So I really like the flexibility of this card in this deck, and the fact that we can just keep doing that consistently is going to be pretty oppressive if our opponents have those thick graveyards. Another one I found was Intrepid Adversary. This one enters the battlefield, and then you can pay a 1 or a generic and a white, and then any number of times. So it's kind of like Kicker, but on an ETB, everything's Kicker, right? And then you're going to go ahead and get a Valor counter on Intrepid Adversary. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each Valor counter on Intrepid Adversary. So you go ahead, it's only 2 mana, right? So it can ETB, you can keep it around with your commander easily, and then it does kind of scale with your game plan. Late game, you can put 4 CMC into this, put 2 counters on it, maybe 6 CMC. I mean, that's probably the worst case scenario, but even just, you know, feeding 1 or 2 CMC into this every turn consistently just gives you an anthem every single turn. That can kind of take over the board. Another thing it does is it really makes our opponent or our commander hard to kill, right? If we keep making our commander slowly stronger, it is going to be harder for our opponents to block it, especially when it already does have menace. And it is a 3/5, so he does have a little bit of beef to him to begin with. Moving on, let's get into a card I'm pretty excited about. We're talking about Behemoth of the Vault. This is from the Fallout set. It's a 6 CMC trampler, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you get 4 energy. So now we have 2 energy from our commander, 4 energy from this. This guy will pay for himself consistently every single turn. But that's not exactly what I'm excited about with this guy. This guy says whenever Behemoth of the Vault dies, you may pay an amount of energy equal to target non-land permanent's mana value when you do destroy that permanent. So if we pair that with our commander and not paying to keep the ability around, we can easily sack this to our commander's trigger and then pay an amount of energy to keep any 6 CMC permanent off the battlefield very consistently. This can be pretty oppressive in this deck, and I'm excited to keep it around. And even if we do end up paying the 6 energy to keep it around, it's a 6/6 trampler. We're happy to do that every turn and just start smashing face. RoboBrain Warmind, this one's a very good one, again also from this Fallout set. So RoboBrain's Warmind power is equal to the amount of cards in your hand. So right out of the gate, it's probably going to be a pretty big boy. And then when he enters the battlefield, you get an amount of energy equal to the number of artifact creatures you control. He himself is an artifact creature. We're not on a ton of artifact creatures, but since he is, and we're going to start creating more and more and more, he can get to a point where he starts paying for himself. And then, whenever he attacks, you can pay 3 energy if you do draw a card. This is just a 4 CMC creature that's going to get massive and consistently generate us energy. So that's going to be solid there. Another one I'm pretty excited about. This one might not be okay, but it's kind of funny. So it's the Motherlode Excavator. When the Motherlode Excavator enters the battlefield, choose target opponent, you get an amount of energy equal to the number of non-basic lands that player controls, right? So then whenever it attacks, you can pay 4 energy when you do destroy target non-basic land defending player controls, and creatures that player controls without flying can't block this turn. So basically, we've got a mass land destruction effect, kind of, if we start creating token copies of this. One, this is just going to generate a lot of energy. Actually, I'm just now noticing it's legendary. So this is just going to generate a lot of energy. I mean, getting that ETB every turn, very useful. The fact that it's legendary, kind of a bummer there, but I think the utility to take out people's impactful lands is probably worth it enough to include this in the deck whenever you pair it with just generating a ton of energy out of nowhere. Aerial Extortionist. This card's kind of slept on, but I kind of get it. It's 5 CMC, flying whenever Aerial Extortionist enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player. Exile up to 1 target non-land permanent for as long as that card remains exiled. Its owner may cast it. Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. So what this does is it's just going to keep them off of their key pieces for a turn, and if they want them back, they're going to have to cast them, right, again. So this is time warping all of our opponents, and what makes this powerful in this deck is it is an attack trigger, so we can do that consistently every turn. And then with our commander, if we're creating even more of these, we can kind of just get to a place where we take all of our key pieces or all of our opponent's key pieces off the board, and then if they want to cast those, we're just going to be drawing a ton of cards, right? In a scenario where we even have 2 of these on the battlefield, it's going to feel pretty oppressive. I also like Nesting Dovehawk in this deck because it's kind of another effect from our commander, right? So whenever we go to combat, we get to populate, and whatever we created a token of last turn, we're going to get to create a token of this turn. Notably, our commander can create copies of Nesting Dovehawk, and Nesting Dovehawk does have an ability that says whenever a creature token enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Nesting Dovehawk. So you can kind of get into a scenario where we go to combat, we create a copy of Nesting Dovehawk with our commander with the attack trigger, and then as long as we created a Nesting Dovehawk last turn, Dovehawk can even start populating on itself, so we can start making 2 Dovehawks into 4 Dovehawks. It kind of does the Scute Swarm thing with extra combats, and the Dovehawks are getting massive because every time a token enters the battlefield, we're putting a 1/1 counter on each Nesting Dovehawk. So this can kind of get to a scenario where you just take over the board. Obviously, the extra combats is just a little bit more powerful than that, but I think it's pretty cool. I also did add Brass's Tunnel Grinder and Goblin Engineer to the deck, just because I wanted another way to get Razorfield Ripper on the battlefield. This is a really cool new card. Whenever Razorfield Ripper or equipped creature attacks, you get 1 energy. Then it gets plus X until end of turn, where X is the amount of energy you have. So this buffs our creature equal to the amount of energy we have, and then it's a 3 CMC creature that generates an energy whenever it attacks. That means that we can generate a lot of these very quickly using our commander, and then they're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I kind of like exponential growth, if you can't tell, right? We've got Nesting Dovehawk, we've got Razorfield Ripper, we've got Captain of the Watch, we've got Intrepid Adversary. This is kind of the route I took with the deck. We're just going to start buffing up our creatures and getting incremental value, and then out of nowhere it's going to be impossible to stop us. Some other amazing cards they put in the deck was Professional Facebreaker. I'm really liking this because even just 3 energy to get 2 Professional Facebreakers to then be able to generate 6 treasure tokens a turn, and that turns into 9 treasure tokens, and then all of those can be used to, all those treasures can be sacrificed to exile the top card of our library. This is just going to be an insane card advantage engine in the deck. Going on to kind of the less exciting adds to the deck, we did add Stroke of Midnight, Windfall, Reconnaissance Mission, and Generous Gift, just for some added card advantage and some added removal. That is going to do it, guys, for what I added. If you want what I took out, I am going to pin it in the, it's going to be in the description down below of what I took out of the Precon. That way you know what to take out, what to add in, and hopefully this will help level out the deck. It was missing some card advantage, so we fixed that. A little bit of spot removal, fixed that, and then we just added some bombs that can end out the game and some value pieces with your Dire Fleet Daredevil. Again, let me know in the comments down below how you like this format as opposed to the other one. If you care about seeing a face, if you don't, I'd really appreciate the feedback on that. With that being said, guys, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors. I would like to shout out my patrons, Newsome, Excessum, Chicken Salad, and Praetor. You guys are amazing. I will see you guys in the next